I went to Phillips unofficially for a year too.
It's time for a little comedy, a little content, and a lot of conversation. It's the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. And now here's your host, Geno Jones.
Hey, showtime, everybody. What's happening? The Geno Jones Show. Bam, 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 bam. Hey, I'm here live. Let me apologize. Really, I know I don't have to. I mean, it is my show. But I love this. This is my passion, and you guys depend on me. There was no live show yesterday. Satan is busy. We rebuke Satan. He was busy. I guess he got pissed off with Easter Sunday and just thought he was gonna come for me on Monday. So we have some some car issues here, but that's life. So anyway, we're in the process of trying to get another vehicle. I'm not gonna bore you with that, but after 224,000 miles and to get everything repaired in the car, and you're looking at $10,000, it's like, yeah, I think it's time to look for a new car. So anyway, we just got tied up dealing with that yesterday. But I'm here today. It is Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. Now, coming to you live Monday through Friday, unless something happens or I tell you otherwise. Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. here on the East Coast. Shout out to those in the Carolinas, broadcasting live from the Geno Media Studios in the beautiful, North Charleston area, part of the Charleston, South Carolina metro area. So everybody from Boston to New York to VA, the DMV, DC, all the way down to Miami and Orlando, the ATL, all the way up to Detroit City. Everybody on Eastern Time, 5:30 Chicago, stand up. Central Time, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Memphis, Dallas, Houston, New Orleans, Little Rock, live in Los Angeles every afternoon, 3:30 p.m. And everybody on the West Coast from San Diego to the Bay Area up to Seattle and Portland, Oregon. We come to you 3:30 p.m. So tell everybody to subscribe to the Geno Jones Show YouTube channel. I am 160 some odd new subscribers away from becoming a YouTube partner. That means my media company will begin to get monthly checks from YouTube. It is crucial that we support black-owned media because there's a lot of lies and distortion and just confusion and bullshit. So let me just cut through the chase. You need platforms where we speak truth to power and tell the truth. I mean, good, bad, or ugly. You know, sometimes you just got to be honest and tell the truth. So that's, as my grandmother said, tell the truth, shame the devil. So that's what we do here. And it's so important that we have platforms and voices and people to come on the show to speak truth to power, but to empower and to enlighten and to energize, along with entertaining and educating, and to inspire and uplift the culture and the community and everybody. That's what we do here. And please, it's so important that we support black-owned media. So if you would like to make a financial contribution, you can Zelle me, GenoJonesShow@gmail. You can just use my email, GenoJonesShow@gmail. You can Zelle or Cash App, $DAD, G Jones, all one word, $, capital D, lowercase AD, capital G, capital J, O, lowercase ONES, $, G Jones on Cash App, and Geno Jones Show at Gmail for Zelle if you want to make a Zelle contribution. Or if you want to be a sponsor, reach out to me, shoot me an email, GenoJonesShow@gmail, and I will shoot you the sponsorship information package. We'll set up a meeting. So I was going to start off the show, so I'm calling an audible, and one of my guests is going to join me live. I told him I wanted to cover this, but something happened here yesterday that is really important. So that's going to take a little priority. So I was going to talk about, and it's related to the law. And one of my guests is our legal expert who was brilliant. He's always brilliant, but the brother broke it down so brilliantly. I'm looking at MSNBC over the weekend, and they had guests and contributors that was basically breaking down due process and breaking it down for the brothers in the barbershops and the sisters in the beauty salons to get that due process. When a country and a nation loses that, You lost everything. That means you have no rights. And folks can just snatch your ass up like they did the El Salvadorian brother Kilmar Abrego Garcia, which is the plan to start with people that nobody may care about and then come for us. But eventually even come for the MAGA cult members who really got pissed off when I said it. Great. I'm glad your ass got pissed off. I saw all my comments in TikTok. So while you getting mad at me, you need to worry about that orange dude, because if you piss him off, he will come for your whiteness, your loyalty to the cult. Your whiteness won't protect you, because whiteness is a made-up construct. It's a con to begin with. There's nothing in the human genome about whiteness. Your DNA test won't come back and say you're like 92% white. Won't happen, because whiteness was created to divide us. And I've talked about that hundreds of times, at least, if not more, on this show. So I digress. But I was going to talk about Shannon Sharpe, former NFL Hall of Famer, two-time Super Bowl champion with the Denver Broncos, and then he got a ring with the crew over there in Baltimore, the Ravens, and Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. So he was brought up. So a woman, Jane Doe, filed a civil lawsuit for $50 million, accusing him of sexual assault and violent rape. I'll get into that tomorrow, because I want to address that. And listen, the brother is innocent until proven guilty, but I'm not going to focus on his innocent or guilt. I mean, I'll just kind of cover what you guys see on social media, but I want to have a larger conversation just about men and masculinity and violence against women, and even violence against each other, and how we got to we got to deprogram our mind, because we've learned some bad habits from folks that brought us here. That it's not really, if you really understand your history and your ancestors and the culture back on the continent, you know, a lot of this bad shit we picked up. You know, you can be around somebody and you can pick up bad habits. It's not really necessarily who we are. So we got to really get back to who we are and about community and culture. So I'll have that conversation on another day. But I want to have this conversation, and I've got, as a matter of fact, I've got a community leader, and he was a guest. He's part of the Geno Jones Show family. He is the head of the Charleston County here in South Carolina Democratic Party, but he's a community activist that's been doing work. I've been here 20 years, and the brother's been out in these streets and in the community for 20 years. So Mother's Day 2022, woman named, I think she's like 53, beautiful black woman named Stephanie Dantzler, and her two beautiful daughters, Shanice Dantzler Williams and Miranda Dantzler Williams. They were killed in a car crash caused by a woman named Emily Pelletier, who was a Charleston County sheriff. Emily Pelletier, evidence in court, and Mr. Dixon will go into detail, apparently was speeding, ran through a stop sign, according to the evidence that came out in court, hit Stephanie Dantzler, Shanice, and Miranda, and killed them in a car crash, speeding, supposedly going to call to help somebody, a car in distress or whatever. So 3 years, this happened Mother's Day of 2022. 3 years later, the sentence came down. Emily Pelletier was found guilty, but the sentence that came down, now keep in mind, 3 black women, 3 women, period. But, you know, the justice system and us and other folks it's always different. Things just fall differently. On their way home from a Mother's Day dinner, were all killed in a car crash. Emily Pelletier was sentenced to 3 years in prison for killing 3 women in their prime who were just coming home from a Mother's Day dinner, and 2 years probation. So there's a lot of folks that's like, is this and they were concurrent sentences, so that means all of them will be served at the same time. But also, our legal expert Sean Mitchell is here, and he can address that. But since this happened right here, in my backyard, and this show is a global show, seen globally. But I want to address this. And as a matter of fact, I'm bringing on my guest, the man you see the upper left-hand corner. He's the head, the chairman of the Charleston County, South Carolina Democratic Party, community activist, putting in that work at least for 20 years. Because I've been here 20 years in March. That was my anniversary. And the brother was here before I got here putting in that work. Brother Pastor Thomas Dixon and Sean Mitchell, our legal expert. You see his handsome face below there. He'll be jumping back in the shop pretty soon. There he is, there. Handsome lad there. Got a haircut. Look at you, boy. He's dangerous. So
thank you for having me on. Pastor
me-
Dixon may not remember, but I was the Berkeley County vice chair of the Democratic Party back when President Obama was running, and I met him through Representative Clyburn one day at up in Columbia at DFA training.
Okay. Small
All
world,
right.
Pastor Dixon.
Yeah. Small world.
But that's
Small
our
world.
Yeah.
we bringing that Chicago energy here to the
I was
the
getting ready
world
to say that's the flavor.
via way of Chicago. So all right, listen, Pastor Dixon. I just did a brief introduction. You can correct anything. I just wanted to set the scene and kind of explain to everybody what happened. But there's outrage. Now, apparently this sentence came down yesterday, but it's funny. So I had on the local news today, even this morning, I didn't see anything. It's like, the sentence happened and poof, it's like no more interest. So, but I think that this is something that we really need to shine a light on because this is just an example or symptomatic of situations like this happening all across America. Like I said, we all grew up in Chicago. Sean is an attorney, so he's seen this. I want to call it injustice. We'll let him speak to the legal aspect, but it's just, it seems to be too. Let me stop. Let me just be honest. It's not there seems to be. There are definitely two standards of justice or the way justice is applied, especially when it comes to black people, either as those who've been charged and convicted or the victims. But Pastor Dixon, I'm gonna let you speak to that, and you can just kind of share how the family and the community feels about the sentencing.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you, Geno, for having me on, my Southside Chi-Town brother. And Sean, good to see you again. Yes, sir. Again, it's that flavor. We bring in that Midwest flavor to the Low Country. And the Low Country, it's a good place to live and everything. Of course, like everywhere else, it just needs some work. And what happened on May the 8th, Mother's Day 2022, is indicative of the work that needs to be done. Unfortunately, on that Mother's Day, that Sunday, that Mother's Day, after spending the day celebrating each other, this mother, Stephanie Dantzler, and her two daughters, Shanice and Miranda, after spending their Mother's Day enjoying each other, heading home that day, enjoying the Stephanie's mother and the two daughters' grandmother that day on their way home, right at about 10:55 p.m. that evening, heading down a very dark stretch of road on Highway 17, which is a very big highway, 4 lanes with a big median in the middle of it. They crossed the road called New Road, and for them, that was the last road that they would know in life. That was the last road that they would see in life. Charleston County Sheriff's Deputy by the name of Emily Pelletier, who you pointed out earlier today. At the time, I believe she was like 24 years old. She's 27. She was right around Shanice's age at that time. But driving her service vehicle, answering a non-emergency call in a very rural South Carolina area, in Ravenel, South Carolina, on a 2-lane road. She was coming down a 2-lane road. in the dark, no street lights and nothing like that. Very few homes, so there's very little ambient light. At times, the vehicle, the computer in the vehicle clocked her speeds at over 81 miles an hour coming down that road, trying to get to this non-emergency uh, traffic problem.
And
At the
Pastor
end,
Dixon, let me just,
yeah.
I wanted to stop you because there's one point, and you're probably about to get there. I apologize, but I just wanted to, make sure we
Mhm.
frame this correctly. On her way to that non-emergency call, correct me if I'm wrong, the evidence showed that Emily Pelletier did not have like her Mars lights on. Is that correct?
That's very correct. Even though the defense in court tried to assert that the lights were on, because the one sheriff's department witness that was there, who actually responded to the scene where Emily Pelletier was supposed to have been going, when this incident happened, he says he glanced up, he heard the noise, glanced up, and saw the blue lights, and he said crossing the road, which is actually it's contradictory. When he heard the crash, that's when he saw the lights. So he couldn't have seen them crossing the road at the same time, especially while he was talking to this lady in her car about a half mile away. So, but yes, she had the computers inside the vehicle indicated that there were no emergency lights or siren on. It would have recorded that happening at the time, that the lights and the siren would have been on. And as they pulled the recorded information and they looked at it, the recording, it was blank during that time. So that meant that the lights and the sirens were not on until after the crash. So I don't know, speculating, it wasn't out in court much. There's a possibility that she was lucid enough and aware enough to say, maybe I better hit this switch for my lights right now, possibly after the accident. But here she was barreling down this pitch black road. Now at the intersection of New Road and Highway 17, this big 4-lane highway with the median in the middle, where the mother and her two daughters were driving on the far side of the road. At the end of New Road, there is a stop sign there that even with a flashlight back quite a few yards, you can that stop sign illuminates very easily to be seen. On that road, speed limits were like, it was posted like 3 times on that several miles that she traveled, 45 miles an hour. Here she was doing over 80 miles an hour. When she went through this stop sign, she did not slow down at all. She was actually clocked at doing 73 miles an hour when she went through the stop sign. And 1 second later, and this was all brought out in court through the scientific evidence. 1 second later, she slammed into the front driver's side panel of the car carrying those 3 women, killing them instantly, knocked their vehicle off into the woods right there, and killing them instantly. The cause of death to all 3 of them was full body blunt force trauma. For the driver, who was Stephanie was the driver. Excuse me, Shanice was the driver. Stephanie, the mother, was in the back seat.
Okay.
Miranda was in the passenger seat. Stephanie and Shanice, the driver and the passenger, both had their seat belts on. It was proven that they were belted. Their vehicle data reflected that they were driving at that time right around 53, 54 miles an hour, which it's in a 60, I think it's a 60 mile an hour zone. So they were observing, they were doing everything they were supposed to do right.
Because they were on Highway 17.
On Highway 17,
which the speed
going
limit
stop.
is higher than that little small.
It's higher. Yeah, it's higher. And without even any kind of notification, wham, just like that. Life over. Life over. Now, first off, the deputy was not arrested then when it happened. She was not arrested then. She was not arrested until June. This was May 8th. She was arrested a month later. And they had to bring her back from wherever she was traveling off to in order to arrest her, actually. And it was the strangest arrest that I've ever seen. Now, I got a background. I've been arrested a few times. Never was I brought into a side door privately. Never was I processed in, gone to bond court and everything without seeing a cell. She was in and out of the jail After they brought her in, after being away for this full month, they brought her in. She was processed in, went to bond court, posted bond or bail, and was out within 2 hours. Within 2 hours. On a journey of 3 years of bond before she actually got to court for her charges. But let's just look at the disrespect inside of that after the death of them. And I didn't even talk about how the defense tried to paint the picture of the three women as this being their fault. They tried to say that Stephanie was drunk, that her blood alcohol level was 0.1888, and which would be legally drunk. Let me recap that right quick then, just to get it out the way. The way that they had to draw the blood for the blood alcohol content, normally it would be at a peripheral area, like the pelvic area or somewhere like that, especially if there's some type of trauma to other areas. Well, with that full body trauma that was inflicted on them, there was nowhere for them to draw the blood for a clean test for blood alcohol content. So that meant that they had to just take blood that was pooling in the chest area and use that for the sample. Now, what happens that makes it a false and an elevated area is when a person drinks alcohol, it's not necessarily processed right away into the bloodstream, where the good draw would be once it's processed into the bloodstream. It sits in the organs, it sits in the liver and in the stomach, in the bowel, in the spleen, and in all of these different, in the lungs. And with the full body trauma that they experienced, all of these organs inside of Shanice were all lacerated. All of them were leaking out, bleeding into that body cavity.
Jesus.
And if there was any alcohol in it, no matter when it was taken, that hadn't been processed into the bloodstream, it was pooling in this cavity. And that's where the sample was taken from. And that's where expert testimony said, expert witnesses said, that's an improper gauge of how much alcohol had been consumed, and no kind of gauge about when it was consumed, because it was just sitting in these body organs and mixed around in there. But the defense attorneys, in closing argument, that I can't say what I would want to say.
No, I get
but
it.
that guy, he had nerve in front of their family to say that she was intoxicated.
So speaking of the family, Pastor Dixon, I just want to segue because I want to bring Sean in to get his legal perspective. Uh, what does the family? I've seen them on TV, but for those who may not have, who don't even deal with, regular TV or the corporate media, and I know you've been able to speak. You've been with the family. Sum up how they feel, and what would they like for the public to do? What would you recommend? Is there something the public can do to, assist in justice? Is this, and like I said, when Sean comes back, like I said, being a legal expert, I don't know from a legal standpoint. You probably have an idea. I don't know about appeal, but speak on behalf of the family. What's the message that they want to get out? Just express their feelings and whatever message that they want to send to the public.
Right. One of the primary messages that the family wants to get out to the public is, first off, that they appreciate all of the support they've had so far, especially the support that came in the aftermath of this verdict. Not the verdict, but the sentencing, because the verdict was guilty, unanimously guilty, with an all-white jury, predominantly. There was maybe one Asian Pacific Islander, and there was one alternate. I think he might have been Hispanic. But other than that, it was an all-white jury. And they found unanimously that there was guilt there. But when it got to that judge, when the judge sentenced, the sentence was just as you described it. Three sentences of 5 years, suspended to 3 years, and to run concurrently. 3 years, 1 year in jail per body. And so the frustration within the family, of course, it's expanded beyond any of the frustrations and anger that the community is feeling, but the community's response has gotten back to them, and they appreciate that response. But moving forward, one of the things that that they would like the community to understand is that they've been going through this for 3 years. They went through the fact that at bond court, bond was set for each one of their dead loved ones at $25,000. 25,000, $75,000 total for 3 dead Black women was the bond. That was a slap in the face there. For the last 3 years, they've had to sit back as victims advocates came to them asking, could Emily Pelletier take a trip here? Could she take a trip there? At one time, she sent word asking, can she go to the Olympics? Just like in court, her family was like, well, we just want to see our little girl have mercy and everything. And in front of this family with no disregard for their loss, total. So the family, one of the things that the family wants is that the community would start doing that one thing that we have not done consistently over time, is to come together ahead of these issues going on. Yes, it's all right to be, as they say, what they say, boots on the ground with the fans and all. It's all great having these big gatherings and everything. But when there's really a need for us to come together because our community is under attack, then we are missing. We are missing. And this family.
So going forward, Pastor Dixon and Sean is coming back. Can you give us the name of the judge? I'm sure we can maybe call, write letters, send emails. I don't know if this is a decision that can be appealed. I want you to speak to that and then toss it to Sean. Maybe you, from a legal standpoint, you can kind of give some perspective on what the community can do to support this family in terms of protesting by, like I said, contacting the judge. I'm sure judges, I know they have bosses also, so I don't know if there's a process where people can complain, say they feel this is not justice, and send letters or emails to this boss's judge. So, Pastor Dixon, you can.
Yep.
I'll let you chime in first, and then toss it to Sean. And Sean, you can kind of give us some legal guidance on what that looks like legally.
Yeah, I'm gonna be brief with this part of it because it's also part of what the family would like to see. The judge's name is Dale Van Slambrook, and he was appointed.
All right, so slow down. Do that again, so folks, if they're watching live, you can write that down. So it's Dale, D-A-L-E,
Dale, D-A-L-E, Van Slambrook, like slam dunk.
Slambrook. No, is it an E at the end or no?
No E.
Okay.
No E.
Slambrook.
Yep. And he was appointed actually last July. He was a judge in Goose Creek, I believe, like a Berkeley County Master of Equity guy and all of this.
Who appointed him? Was it the governor?
Our state legislators, and that's where I'm going with this. Our state legislators appoint the judges. And now, since we have a Republican, and forgive me for if there's any kind of offense in this, but since we've had a Republican state or General Assembly for the last 22 years, he is a Republican appointee. He's a Republican appointee to the point that I found a post on Facebook with Scarlett Wilson, who is our lead solicitor, who is the boss over the prosecutors who litigated this case. She congratulated him last July on his assuming this role, his appointment as a judge. I wonder if there's some kind of, it makes you want to wonder about that. But that's Dale Van Slambrook. And so the way that we overcome this is we have got to stop not voting. We need to get people into our General Assembly who are not going to allow judges who don't represent us and who we are and what we do. There was a judge in the next courtroom that handed out a sentence in a drug case, 12 years. 12 years in a drug case, but in the courtroom with Van Slamberg, 3 dead women, and they got 3 years.
Wow.
So our failure to vote out the people who continue to put in those in office in the judgeships who are counterproductive to what we do as a people and who we are, they're not like us. And they don't like us. And they treat us accordingly. And as long as we won't go to the polls and vote in people who are actually going to represent us and work on our behalf, we're going to continue to be subjected to this type of oppression. And we are our own worst enemies when it comes down to it. So with that, let me toss it over to Sean.
Well, let me just say that we're all we got, but we're all we need, because the truth is we really do stick together. There's a narrative that's been pushed by people who want us to believe and want the world to believe that we don't stick together. But the truth
That's
is
right.
we actually do. And this show right here, right now, is proof that we stick together. But Sean, please, I want you to speak to this on whatever perspective, from a legal standpoint, in terms of people in this situation. Can the public can the public complain? What does that complaint look like? And
Yeah,
what do you think would be the most effective way to try? Because I don't know if the judge can go back and say, you know what,
yeah.
maybe I was a little light with that sentence. Maybe I need to
Mhm.
adjust that. So speak to all that.
Okay, so let me start by saying, my prayers go out to the family, the Dantzler family. This is the first of me hearing about this story, but that's very unfortunate. So the first thing I wanted to do was try to get some background and look at some news stories. So I definitely can appreciate the work that Pastor Dixon has done on the issue. I think that it's always important that community leaders speak out. And so after kind of figuring out what was the former officer charged with, it looks like she was charged with reckless vehicular homicide under South Carolina law 56-5 2910. And so when I look at that, there's a range of sentences that can range up to 10 years. Without having the transcript or really knowing the facts of the case, I'll just give you a plain, bare bones
Right.
analysis. It looks like the reason why the officer didn't get the full 10 years is without knowing what's going on. The judge might have deemed it uh, non mitigating factors. What am I talking about? Alcohol or drugs involved with the person that actually struck it. It's an officer on their way to a call. When I dug into the call, because I was really curious about that, and this is where I totally understand and respect where Pastor Dixon is coming from, where there may needed to have been a recusal. Maybe this needed to be moved out of the county and into another county to be handled, because there looks like there's a relationship between the solicitor's office and the judge that's sitting on this. And then we know that there's obviously a relationship between the solicitor's office and the police department, the sheriff's department.
Yes.
And so it would have been it would have been better to move this to another county and let them deal with this, because it looks to me, just looking at it, um, even how they drew blood. I mean, you have to believe that Charleston's county coroner knows that in a traumatic upper body injury. And the only reason why I know a little bit about this, let me give you a little of my background. While in law school, I interned and worked in the DUI enforcement task force unit in Kane County that prosecuted DUIs. Okay. And so most of the people that are involved in drawing blood, at least in the state of Illinois, dealing with DUIs, know where to take the blood from. And I have to believe that Charleston County coroner or whoever conducted that part of the investigation should have known, with that much trauma to the body, upper body, that they needed to draw blood from another area. The next question is, what is Charleston Sheriff's protocol when traveling to non-emergency incidents and to emergency incidents? I'd like to believe that if you don't have your lights on, officer, you should be traveling at the posted legal limits. If you do have your lights on, then in that situation, from what I remember about South Carolina, let me give you some more background. I used to drive trucks up and down 17 to the Port of Savannah. So I'm pretty familiar with that area of South Carolina. And if this happened at night and you're coming off a side road, and I was just trying to picture in my head where New Road is, I'm sure I've passed it dozens of times
You
going to
said it's near
Walter.
Ravenel, right, Pastor?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
actually
it's where I thought it was going to be, where it kind of splits off.
it's like
And it
15 miles after 520 after 526. 15
Okay,
miles.
so
Yeah.
I think I have a general idea. So with all of that and everything that Pastor Dixon has said and everything that I've read and everything I know from living in Charleston, South Carolina for almost 12 to 15 years is that the good old boys network, and the reason why I'm couching it is I am a lawyer, so I have to be careful with everything, and especially not knowing all the facts, is that this, wasn't handled the way it should have been handled. And, it's unfortunate for the family. I also see where they filed a civil lawsuit against the officer for wrongful death for the deaths, but that never replaces the loved one. Um, what I would say to the people, and I did a quick search in South Carolina, because in Illinois, we have in Cook County, for instance, even though I don't live in Cook County, but I happen to work for an organization that is also in Charleston, South Carolina. I work for the Chicago Appleseed Org, and I know they exist in Charleston, South Carolina. Here's what we focus a lot on in Illinois. I'm not sure whether they do this at that particular branch of Appleseed, but we hold judges accountable. In other words, they do an assessment of judges and they publish that to the voters. Okay. So voters can see that in most jurisdictions, your local county judges, you vote for them. And this is why those off year local elections really do matter.
Yes.
And as I was talking off camera with Reverend Dixon, I can remember working on the Obama campaign and being a part of the Democratic Party right there in Berkeley County. And what I found out real quick was that the Republican base votes every single election. They don't care if it's dog catcher, it could be for the head garbage man, it could be for the person that count the grains of sand on the beach in Mount Pleasant. They voting for it. Where we only show up during the presidential election, and oh, guess what? If the president didn't do what he said he did, I'm talking about Obama in 2012, you see us say, oh, he didn't do what he said he did. Politics is a long game, just like the arc of justice, as I was reminded the other day by my partner. She read a quote from Dr. King that we look at the short game instead of looking at the long game. The long game in South Carolina should be to get control of your local, your state government.
Say that.
Everything else doesn't really matter to you until you get control of the local people that have the most impact. All politics are local. We learned that in Chicago. It's a block by block street fight for those votes. And so until people in red states in particular, because I'm back here behind the blue wall, start taking local politics seriously, you're in danger of getting judges like this. Now,
Right.
you can hold this judge accountable. I'm sure he's going to come up for election. I didn't really dig into it, but what I have to offer
Hold
is
on, you
if you
said
go to
Pastor Dixon. Hold on. Didn't you say he was appointed? He was.
Appointed. Yeah, no, the judges aren't elected.
oh, they aren't elected, but don't they have to be voted on in order to hold that seat?
No.
Ooh.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Well, there you go, South Carolina. You need an amendment to change that in itself.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
we still in the 1700s here now.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Same good old boy system.
Yeah. You are one step away from the governor being able to appoint the senator, and they
Yep.
do it when there's a vacancy, which gives that person incumbency level
Yeah.
to hold on to that.
That's
But
how Tim
excuse me.
Scott got his position.
Exactly. Oh, we. I excuse me. You
I didn't
making me
mean to
cough.
make you choke.
You making me choke. There's some people that probably still pray for me at a church I used to attend, and there was a confrontation, and I said some words to them, And I just hope those people that said that to me are still getting their Social Security checks, because Tim Scott, who stood there and prayed with you every Sunday, is voting to take your Social Security check.
Say
And
That's
that.
right.
so I want them to know that I said that I don't have the long locks like I used to, and I'm not as radical. I'm a little older, wiser. I'm now a grandpa. But when I lived there, I used to have to sometimes say to black folks, you know, we's free now, and we can go out here and do a whole bunch of stuff. So let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you what you can do about this judge, at least on the surface. Because I'm a lawyer, I like to give good advice, not
Good.
too much radical advice, unless we're having a drink or watching a game and it's outside of public view. You
Yes.
can go to S as in Sam, C as in Carolina, courts.org, and you can file complaints or register your disagreement with a judge. Now, let me say this. I don't know how that will work with in South Carolina outside of just reading briefly what I read while I listened to Pastor Dixon. But what I will say is you should be contacting your local state representative to log complaints. You should be contacting the Senate. I'm sure both the Assembly and the Senate have a judiciary committee. You should be writing the chair of that committee. You should be going down to that courthouse peacefully to want to talk to somebody like the chief judge, and maybe it's a different position in South Carolina, to explain to you how three women who were on their way home driving legally and safely on Mother's Day night get ran over by an officer that wasn't following procedure, that obviously has lied, and that there seems to be some kind of relationship between the entities that are supposed to enforce the law and also administer justice. And so the way I would say is to approach that is definitely create a network of clergy to work. Try to reach out to some of those allies who are white Christians that believe that, to bring them into the fold. Because if it's these three black women that get ran over by an officer failing to follow procedure, the next time it might be the white lady with her three children in the car, and then
Right.
we'll see the outrage about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the coalition should be, we don't want this to happen to anybody. Color has no bounds in it, but justice should be fair and swift. You know, on the surface, I think that if a private citizen did the same thing and in the same circumstances, rushing to go to their daughter who's stranded on the side of the road, ran over someone, they probably would have gotten at least 7 years.
Yeah.
And so, you know, cutting, you know, I thought five would be fair, because if they're not going to do five, they'll probably do three. Now you're looking at a person that in 18 months who killed three people, even though they were a former officer, is going to walk away from this. There's no
Mm-hmm.
consequence to that.
Well, you know, Sean, how they did
So,
it, just to jump in, and the reason I'm doing that because it's ironic you mentioned 5 years. Pastor Dixon, it was a total of a 5 year sentence, but 3 years were in prison and the other 2 years are on probation, correct?
Suspended. That's right. Suspended five, suspended to three,
right.
and
I
then
figured there was going to be a horse trading somewhere in there.
running concurrently.
Yeah. So, you know, the other thing is that the laws in South Carolina, I know people don't like to talk about this, but that's really light for reckless vehicular homicide. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
And three
I'm not
deaths?
I'm not for locking people up for extended periods of time, but when you kill somebody, that's kind of where we can't get those three people back.
Right.
And you need time out to think about that. And as an officer, you have a bigger responsibility to the
Yes.
general public. So you should always be, what I just from reading it, they were following an officer and they decided to break off and go their own way. They testified that they were not familiar with the back roads at all. This is just from news stuff. This is not me
Yeah.
looking at a transcript. This is
Mm-hmm.
me just looking at it from a lawyer from another jurisdiction brought onto a show to just give you my opinion, and just thinking and having experience in the prosecutor's office, knowing all these factors, even when an officer does something wrong, we've had it here in the Chicago area. They transfer that case to another county because
Mm-hmm.
there's too much of a conflict. Obviously, the prosecutor and there in South Carolina, the solicitor works with the sheriff's department. They
Mm-hmm.
work with the courthouse.
Exactly.
It shouldn't have been in that county. It could
Nope.
have been in another county that had, they could have taken it upstate, far away where there's no news coverage of it, and go ahead and go through the process. If they came away with the same, then it's a really problem in South Carolina. But I don't think that would have happened in another county.
Sean, the other part about that is that with the solicitor's office, the prosecutor's office, our lead solicitor here, who you said you were here 2012 or something like that, she
Hmm.
started in that office then. And since then, every
Scarlett
office,
Wilson, Sean, you remember her?
Scarlett Wilson, um,
I might
but
have heard that name before, but that's during my time as I'm getting ready to head. By 2012, I'm here. I left in the November of 2011. I had
Okay.
moved
oh yeah,
back to
this was
Illinois.
afterward. But every officer involved death case that she's litigated or was litigated on her watch, there's been no convictions. Many of them never even made it to court. This case was
Mm,
the first time there was actually a conviction. Then here come the judge.
mm.
So to me,
Yeah,
the fix was on all along. She
yeah.
doesn't prosecute cops, period.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Walter Scott case in North Charleston,
Yes,
where Michael
yes,
Slater
yes,
shot him in the back 5 times. He missed three
yes.
shots, and there was a video of it. In the
Hmm.
state case, she couldn't get a conviction in this. It was a hung jury.
Mm.
And Michael
Yeah.
Slager never would have gone to jail had it not been for the civil rights violation in the federal court case. That's what he's in
Hmm.
prison for now.
Mm.
Right.
There's at
Is
least 7 or 8 cases. Another vehicular homicide with a cop. No charges brought in that case, and it's been
hmm
consistent. But I was just
hmm
looking at the Folly Beach case where the bride and her groom, they were riding in the golf cart,
Oh yeah.
and the drunk woman ran them over, killed the bride right there, and she got 25 years. But it was a different case. It wasn't reckless vehicular homicide. It was
right,
felony DUI.
right,
So the
right,
statute is different. The
right,
sentencing statute is different.
right.
But still, in all of it,
Anytime.
she got the max
Yeah.
that she could get.
Right.
In this case, these 3 dead black women, they got nowhere near the max. I mean,
Right.
the community would have been happy with 10 years running
Right.
consecutively.
Concur. Yeah. Right. Right.
Consecutively.
Right. Because at that point, the former officer, would have did at least 7 of those years, and
Hmm.
so that's why I didn't understand the. So it lets me know it was 5, and it's reduced down to 3.
Hmm.
And yeah, maybe even if you were gonna go 7 and had it 5 with 5 in or something, yeah, that's really. So I think the steps are to, especially the family, because they probably have standing under South Carolina law to file a complaint against the judge's sentencing in the SC courts situation. I would advise, church and like-minded friends and family and people in the community that don't want to see this happen again, develop a coalition. I would say, and I can't speak for them because I don't know, because each Appleseed org is an independent org, but
Hmm.
this sounds like something that they definitely should be looking at because that's the type of work we do. Just to give you an example, in the city of Chicago, we, in the state of Illinois, the org Chicago Appleseed, we helped craft the law that made nonviolent offenses and offenses under certain levels, at least misdemeanors,
Hmm.
cashless bond. You
Hmm.
know,
Okay.
and that's from people getting traffic tickets and driving with a suspended license, even though they have a job. I'm not questioning they shouldn't be driving with a suspended license, but you shouldn't spend 3 weeks in jail because you don't have the bond money to get out, losing your job in your home because you made a
Hmm.
mistake. And so
Hmm.
that's the fundamental. The other thing is that in Cook County, Sheriff Dart was in control of the electronic monitoring situation of people out on bail or out on bond. It was a disaster.
Hmm.
So we wrote legislation to get and worked with community leaders to get that taken over by the Chief Justice of Cook County, where the courts run the electronic monitoring as opposed to the sheriff's office. And so these are things that took faith-based leaders, political leaders to get involved with nonprofit orgs and push legislation. I know South Carolina is a different animal, but I'm just here to tell you, and I know you know, and we know from history and just from knowing you and knowing what you're about and what most of the people in Charleston area and throughout South Carolina are about, is that you can make change through coalitions of people moving people together, because this is not just about the Dantzlers. This can happen to anybody at any moment, on any date, at any time, when the sheriffs can't be held accountable for reckless homicide by not even following simple procedures of having lights and sirens on. I know here in Chicago, they turn lights and sirens on when the Krispy Kreme sign come on, just to get where they gotta go.
You see, when
So,
that hot donut sign is on,
That hot now.
so you know
I love
that
it. But
yes.
So let me, so Sean,
Appleseed,
so this
Columbia
Apple, hold on,
is very active.
and Pastor Dixon, I'm coming to you. You can let us know. So the organization where the public family can, I guess, file, write a complaint letter. You said, what is the organization? Is it SeanApple.org? Pastor Dixon, are you familiar with that organization here in the
Appleseed, and they're based out of
Appleseed?
Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So I figured you were familiar with it. So all right.
Yeah, I know some of the, as a matter of fact, I'll be up there at the State House tomorrow for a thing with Butch Kennedy, hands around the State House, lobbying for this hate crimes bill. Unfortunately, here we are once again, South Carolina, out of 50 states. We are one of 2 states remaining who doesn't have a hate crimes ordinance.
Yeah,
Do I think the hands around the State House tomorrow is going to work? Nope. What's going to work is that we have to repeal and replace the Republicans who are seated in our legislature, in our General Assembly, and replace them with people who are going to work for the people.
And that's what Sean was saying. Is like, listen, you got to take control of your local government. I mean, local, city, or town, township, council, and state houses, state representatives, state senators, your governors.
So do you think I just woke up one day and decided I was going to run for the chair of the Democratic Party? This is well, listen here. This is a long-standing plan.
Yeah.
That long game, Sean. That long game.
And I can vouch for that, Sean. I can vouch for that. Like I said, because I met this brother when I first got here, 20 years ago. So he has been planting those seeds, and he has been. And it's interesting when you mentioned coalitions. He's been building these coalitions since I've known him. So,
and now I'm in a much better position to further build these coalitions, and also to empower our community that's felt like there's no reason to be a part of the system. I can empower them to get it in place now and to be a part of the system. And again, this was not just by chance.
Yes. You know what else I just thought about that'll help you with a little bit of a memory of me, that when I was in charge of party, I had locks. So here I am, this 6'3" black man in 2007 arguing about how many of us are going to get seats that are voters for Obama at the national convention. And I could remember some of our white liberal friends was like, well, you got to take it easy. Some of this is a little shocking. You got to remember that we have conservative Democrats in the South Carolina party. Well, hey, come on. If we don't need conservatives or leftists. We need Democrats to push the agenda.
Exactly.
I don't care what you are. What I care about, are you going to save Social Security? Are you going to fight for voter rights?
Say that.
Are you going to make sure we're getting jobs?
I don't even use the term party anymore. It's about democratic values, because as soon as I say party, people shut down. They don't want to hear that.
And
So
I'm glad, and Sean, Pastor Dixon and I talked about this because, and you and I have worked in media. I'm still in this game. Narrative. The narrative is everything. The narrative is the narrative is what they want you to believe. And the narrative and the truth, in too many cases now, are exactly opposite. A narrative is my version of your truth. So I can project whatever I want people to believe about you through the narrative that I speak to and promote using the media about, all, black folks are this, and blah, 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 blah. But so we have to control our own narrative, which is why it's so important. And Pastor Dixon and I was talking because especially now, this is the moment to where, and especially Gen Zs and millennials, they don't give a damn don't come to them talking about a Democrat, a Republican, or a MAGA. They want to know, are you going to make buying a house affordable? Are you going to make sure that these folks don't, all these corporations that bought up all the housing to we're trying to rent a one-bedroom apartment and they're trying to charge you damn near $3,000. Will I be able to will I be able to go ahead and afford to go to college? Can I get student loan forgiveness, or will I be able to get financial support? Will my mother or my grandfather, will they get their Social Security and Medicare? Will my sister still be able to get free preschool with Head Start? Will my grandmother be able to still get her Meal on Wheels because she's on a fixed income and that little Social Security check? She can't pay for rent and pay for her medicine and still have enough food to last till the end of the month. All those social services, Sean, you were talking about.
It's amazing, Geno, because everything that you're talking about, those are the democratic values that I talk about. And that's how we communicate to other people. And as well as most people know, I'm that one guy, I kind of span the generation thing. There's no generation gaps when it comes to me. I relate to the young ones, the old ones. I relate to those who've been behind that wall, because I've been behind that wall. I relate to the alcoholics and drug addicts because I've been there and everything, So look, I am you. And when I package it that way, most of the people are receptive to it. And that's why I have a black following, I have a white following, I have a Native American following. I'm down with the Hispanic brothers and sisters. And no matter what it is, though, we're moving in the right direction now because there's more of a welcoming attitude into the big tent right here in Charleston County. It's no longer an elitist club. Good. You can't take a person that got a South Carolina prison number and call it elitist.
And Pastor Dixon, Sean and I talked about this last Thursday, and he did a brilliant job like he did tonight in terms of what we framing this narrative. And the narrative is, if you feel that, especially, I'm just going to keep it 1,000, or just be honest like we are, if you are a black person, if you are a brother in the barbershop watching me now, or a sister in the salon, why should I care about who? Kilmar or Abrego Garcia? Why should, the Hispanics, they didn't vote for, especially the Hispanic men, they didn't vote for Kamala Harris. So, they don't support us. So why don't we support them? Well, first of all, that's not necessarily so. It depends on the circles that you're traveling in. But more important than that, which was the main theme and the narrative, which is not a narrative, it's a fact, Pastor Dixon, is that the other day, a couple weeks ago, it was Kilmar Abrego Garcia. But tomorrow, it could be you, it could be me, it could be Sean, and next week, the following week, for all you MAGA, red hat wearing, flag flying MAGA cultists, it can be you, because the cult and cult leader will turn on you. I guarantee you. I don't care how loyal, you can worship at his feet, you can bathe his feet, whatever. Bring him cases of Diet Coke and carry his golf bag and golf balls and clubs. It don't matter. It don't matter. Eventually, just all you got to do is study history from
That's
Hitler,
it.
Mussolini. Stop. They will eventually come for you too. If you get out of line one time, they will
Mm-hmm.
come for you, and this made up construct of whiteness, it will not protect you because they coming for your Social Security, Medicare,
You're right.
Medicaid, veterans benefits, and your whiteness isn't protecting you.
That's
Elon
right.
Musk, his ass don't give a damn about your whiteness. All right,
Mm-hmm.
they're going after Social Security, period, full stop. And so that was the
Mm-hmm.
narrative. And Sean did a brilliant job breaking it down legally, talking about the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment and
Mm-hmm.
just the basic what due process. Because people, what is due process? And Sean has broke it down that you in America you have a right. If I accuse you of a crime, then I have the constitutional right that was
Mm-hmm.
written by a bunch of wealthy white dudes who didn't
Mm-hmm.
even mention women in the Constitution and said black folks were not even full humans. It said
Mm-hmm.
in at least in that, or with the amendments, that if I accuse you of a crime, and Sean articulated it beautiful, so I'm not gonna step in your lane, Sean, but you have a right to what they call, that means you have a right to say, okay, you accuse me something, I didn't do it. Let me prove in a court of
Mm-hmm.
law that I didn't do what I was accused of. Sean, is that a good way to break it down?
Yeah, that's the bare bones. It's the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment comes from the federal government. Your right to due process under, any penalty from the federal government, and then uh, post Civil War, when we added more amendments to the Constitution, in comes the 14th Amendment, and it's applied to the states as well, that you are granted due process. You can't be deprived of liberty, which means your freedom, property, which means things that you own, or rights. In some states, in a lot of states, that right extends to state employment. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't understand that with state employment in the majority of states, there are certain benefits you get: free health care, pension, and all of those. And uh, the governors can't just fire you without cause, because that's denying you a right to your property. And so that's the due process amendments. The Fifth and the 14th cover so many of your protected rights, that when the government accuses, or even in civil court, there's a requirement that you have to go through a trial. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a trial by jury per se, but most of the time it does. And parties can, some in situations, waive those rights. But for the most point, um, taking it to the Abrego Garcia case, what's people are looking at, what we like to call in Chicago, the overplay for the underplay, you know, where Trump is using a 1940s law that wasn't probably shouldn't have never been granted by Congress, but
Wasn't
they,
it before that though, Sean? Initially,
yeah, well, yeah, it's like
from the late 1700s.
it's like well, yeah, it's from the 1700s, but we've only really carried it out a few times in our nation's history. The last memorable time is the Japanese internment
Yes, in the
camps.
40s. Yes.
And so what people don't realize is as angry as people, you can feel some way about illegal immigration. I totally get it. But even in those situations, even if you're not an American citizen, once you're in the United States territory, then you're afforded due process. That doesn't mean that you won't be deported. That just means you can't be deported until you're afforded due process. In the Garcia case, he was already given protection from the immigration courts So he had a court order on the table saying he could not be sent back to El Salvador. So that lets you know how evil and conniving the current administration is. What did they want to do? They wanted to send somebody back to the corrupt country that they ran from to avoid persecution. Now, I'm not no preacher.
Well, Pastor Dixon is. He can help me out with this.
So, can you help me out? Can you, Pastor Dixon, can you give me an equivalent from the Bible of what it would look like sending someone that's fleeing El Salvador to the safety of the United States? If one of the ancient kings sent that person back to El Salvador, can you give me something out of the Bible that'll help everybody understand what I'm talking about?
It's a real simple concept. There were 2 commandments given. The multiple commandments, 600 and some odd in the Old Testament, boiled down to 10, and those 10 boiled down to 2. The first one says that you got to love God. The second one, it says just as vital. It says you have to love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. Now, take for instance, if slavery in America would have been white enslavement, and they had an opportunity to flee enslavement in America and go somewhere else and live. And wherever they went and lived, let's just say they went to Africa to live a peaceful life there. But the Africans said, nope, you can't live here. We're gonna make you go back to where you came from. Them folks were not like that. They would say, no, you wrong. We've been living here. You've offered us safety. Now all of a sudden, because you got a new king, you're telling us that we got to go back to enslavement? Well, it's that simple concept. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And our society today, controlling factor of our society today, although they claim the banner of Christianity, although many of them can quote particular passages of the Bible and overlook other passages of the Bible, they do not accept, nor do they believe, nor do they practice what they preach, because they're hypocrites, they're lying. And my book says in the book of Revelations that all liars are going to end up in the lake of fire. So even if I don't win in this realm right here, I know one day them folk gonna get theirs.
And Pastor Dixon, I'm not getting in your lane, but I'm going to, because I've talked about this many times on the show, I'm sure with Sean. Listen, and we really don't want to have this conversation. Easter Sunday was a couple days ago. This remixed version of Christianity that was used to enslave our ancestors, because we don't even want to have the conversation about the origins of Christianity and where the origins were, which is the continent of Africa, Ethiopia, in that area, Coptic Christians. So we don't even have to talk about this remix version that has been used in this country in too many cases to oppress, to kill, and to deny people just basic humanity. Now, was I inaccurate with that assessment, Pastor?
Spot on, spot on. And the reality is, we can look at the historicity of whatever religion. Yes. We can go back with whatever religion. But the basic tenet of most religions are the fact that we're to love one another the way we love ourselves. That's the basic tenet. If we don't worry about where it started or who did this or who did that, if I just treat myself just like I want to be treated, that's my kind of religion. I don't care what the name is on it. And that's the stuff that makes the world go round. A great R&B singer way back in the day, Walter Jackson, he said, love makes the world go round. Makes the sun go up and down.
All right, go ahead, Pastor Dixon. Go and break out them old R&B skills now from another life.
You know what it's like growing up in the shop.
I know. All right. Sean, listen, thank you, man. I know how busy you are. You got
Yeah.
any final thoughts you want to share with the public?
My last words to I guess to the audience would be that you're not necessarily powerless in any of these results from that local verdict. Definitely hold the judges and the people who appoint the judges accountable. That's where you really get to stick it to your local folks. And then it's important that you have activists like Reverend Dixon who are willing to not only, speak about God, but also speak to people in their daily lives about voting, because prayer only gonna get you so far. You got to do a little work, so you need to go out
What's the
there and
saying?
vote.
Faith
And
without
so
works is
I can
dead,
appreciate.
Pastor. I'm
So I can
paraphrasing that.
appreciate the pastor running for the Democratic chair in South Carolina, definitely knowing that 40% of the people in South Carolina and black, and probably about a good 37%, a good 70% of those people there vote Democratic. That's a strong voting bloc, and you can use that. The beautiful thing that I experienced in the South. Um, at being born in the north and also growing up in the suburbs and growing up in a suburb that was newly integrated and living in a far suburb now is just coming down south and seeing these whole entire communities that are black government, black people, black businesses, and all those things. But what I always felt, living there, that the political power was not being put to use. And my last thing I'm going to say to you is Fred Hampton comes from where I grew up in Maywood, Illinois, on the west side. A lot of our recent elders in the Democratic Party and congressmen, I think of Congressman Bobby Rush, he was an ex-gangbanger. So I'm talking to the non-people that don't think about politics. I'm talking about the ex-drug dealer that owns a laundromat now. I'm talking to the cat that just got out of juvie, and they told me wipe your record clean. You can go and start over. And I'm talking to the beautician, the barber. I'm talking to all of you. You need to make a requirement. One thing I told my daughter and my son when they started dating, I said, one of your first questions to a young person that you want to date is ask them, do they vote?
Mm.
The first question is, do they believe in a higher being? The second question is, do they vote? And so that's going to tell you two of the most important things you need to know about that person. Do they have faith, and are they willing to work? Because voting is work. It's not just the day of the election. It's not just the year of the election. It's always an election. And the Republicans run their lives like it's always an election. And we need to run our lives like it's always an election. You know why? Because them acting like it's always an election, they've eroded rights. I've watched it since I've been old enough. It started with Ronald Reagan. I was a little boy then. They've been eroding and chipping and doing and doing. And then just when we think we swung this way with Clinton, they come back in, they erode and they chip and they erode and they chip. And then we get Obama and we swing this way, yay. Then they come back, they erode and they chip. We get a little thing with Biden and then they come back. What do you expect from them?
And let me say
It
this, Sean.
shows
Let me
you.
jump in here and say this. Let's go back. Let's be honest, Pastor Dixon. You can help me out. We got to go all the way back to Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
All the way back to Nixon. And he had a dude named Kevin, I can't remember his last name, who really came up with the original Southern strategy that this guy named Lee Atwater, Google Lee Atwater, perfected in terms of using racial fear, bigotry, hatred, throwing some misogyny and sexism to lock in the poor and working class whites, to make them fear black folks and people of color, and that black people were going to take away their jobs and their money and their life. So basically, those elites, billionaire class, could basically come in and do what they're doing now. Like Sean, you said, this is the project that's been 50 plus years.
Yeah,
Dixon,
yeah, and
in the making.
the real dynamic of it is to put it in a modern term, it was a combination of the 1968 well, excuse me, the 1964 presidential campaign where the Republicans split their votes. You had Goldwater from
Yes.
Arizona running a more traditional, conservative, limited government, uh, um, evangelical style thing, and then you had former governor from Alabama,
George Wallace.
George Wallace running a very racial,
Mm-hmm.
divisive campaign. And so that later on creates Nixon. And Nixon got too caught up in the corruption and all the different things he was trying to do. But Nixon laid the groundwork for who? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan ran a quiet version of the Southern strategy. How did he do that? He couched it with the evangelical right wing of the Republican Party. What does that look like? When you go to Philadelphia, Mississippi for your first presidential campaign speech, that sends a signal. That is a whistle, a
Oh.
dog whistle to all the racists that believe with me. I'm showing you where I am.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then to top it all off, I can't think of the man's name, but he was from basically the Christian Council, the evangelicals that Trump has surrounded himself with, the Grahams of the world, where they made a statement. They don't want
Pat
everyone to
Buchanan.
vote.
Pat Buchanan.
It's not Pat Buchanan. It's another gentleman. I can't think of his name, but they don't want everybody to vote.
All right. You talking
They
about the
only want,
moral majority?
yes, the
Yeah.
moral majority
Yeah. His name
guy.
was on the tip of my tongue. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, has been a strategy. In comes the constant, like I said, chip, chip, chip voting rights, chip, chip, chip voting rights, and to the point they were able to run the first steal of an election with Bush two. That
Mm-hmm.
gave them the foundation of who's in the Supreme Court
Say
now.
that.
You had the current Chief Justice Roberts in the Holder case strike down Holder versus Shelby County, basically destroyed that whole voting rights where approval
Pre-clearance.
had to come from the Department of Justice in order to change voting laws, and that wasn't quite enough, but it started open up the floodgates, just like it has with the women's autonomy over their bodies
Mm-hmm.
and all of these things. And what is that at? If you go back and look at every one of those elections, 8 out of the last 10 Democrats have won all the majority of the votes nationwide. But the problem is that our turnout rates are not consistent.
That's
We
right.
turned out for Obama. We turned out for Biden. We didn't turn out for Hillary. We didn't turn out for Vice President Harris. There lies the problem. Then when you look at the local numbers in the cities where we have overwhelmingly blue majorities, the black vote is decreasing. That
Mm-hmm.
is a problem. And I'm sure those numbers, I haven't looked at the South Carolina numbers since like 2010 or 11, but I'm sure those numbers are reflecting that same thing there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And then here comes this ex-felon, former drug addict. They put in charge of this thing. First time that they've had an actual activist in this seat. Looking at the history of the Democratic Party, while the Republican Party ran a strategy called the Southern Strategy for 60 years, they were putting this thing in place piece by piece, steadily, like you say, chipping away. And then in between, we would take control for a minute. We would actually save the nation in that either 4 or 8 years. We would bring us back from the brink of destruction. But all the same time, and I'm gonna use an analogy based on this boots in the ground and the fans and all of that and carrying on. That's all we did during that time was dance and party our way until the next election instead of having a strategy. We never had a strategy. And because of that, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And we have failed to plan, and subsequently we have failed. We have planned, we have failed. And now is the time for that change, though. Now is that time for the change. I can't say nationally because there are a lot of people nationally with the party who still have their heads stuck in the sand. They don't listen to the young ones. They don't listen to new ideas. They like that elite club idea, the country club idea. They talk about the big tent, but really they got a members only sign over the front door. And here comes Dixon. So we're gonna do some things down here. I don't know. I might not be in the chair for the 2 years because they might try to put me out. I don't know, but I ain't scared of them. I ain't been scared of racists out here either. White supremacists, none of them. So hey,
So
hey,
before you guys go, Sean, and Pastor Dixon is familiar. You want to encourage the public, especially here in the Charleston, South Carolina metro. But even if you don't live here, if you just if you just believe in justice, and there's no way that the Dantzler family can ever get true justice because they can't bring Stephanie and Shanice and Miranda back. But at least there should be accountability, Sean, like you said, and this organization. I don't know if it's a nonprofit or not. Appleseed was it .org, where people I guess can go online and they can file a formal complaint. What does that look like legally, Sean? And Pastor Dixon, I know you
Well,
said
that's not through appleseed.org. You can go to sccourts.org.
okay.
That's the state body over the judicial system, and I would I didn't really investigate, but it looks like that's where complaints start. But
Okay.
at the same time, since these individuals are appointed by the assembly, and I assume confirmed with the Senate in the state of South Carolina, then you need to be in contact with your representative in your area and tell them your displeasure. You know, as Reverend Dixon said, that same day, she got 3 years, and a drug dealer with no violent deaths got like 20 years. So that's in itself is enough to alert your representatives, because that's who's picking the judges there. And then I would, if I'm the South Carolina resident, that I would urge to have a law changed where even if they do get appointed, in order to hold the next to go to their next term, they need to be voted on. Because I know they'll try to tell you, oh well, it's dirty money. Well, these are nonpartisan elections when you elect judges. So
Yeah.
why not let the judge's record stand and the voters decide whether this person can continue to be a judge? Because they're supposed to uphold the law non-partially. And so the voters should have opportunity to decide whether you continue to be a judge after your appointed terms. And they can look at other state models that lay it out. I mean, I'm shocked that that's still going on in South Carolina in that
welcome to
structure.
the good old boy system, Sean.
So,
Welcome to
so
the
this
they,
organization,
not
appleseed.org,
that.
what is that again now, Pastor Dixon? Because you're familiar with them too, Sean?
Appleseed is an advocacy group that
Okay.
does legal advocacy
Okay,
for
gotcha.
um, systems of injustice,
Okay.
no matter where it is. So
Right.
environmental,
Right.
individual, no matter what it
Right.
is. If there's an issue going on,
Right.
Appleseed will fight for it.
Right.
There's a little bit watered down in South Carolina,
Okay.
but then again,
Right.
most organizations here are watered down.
So
But the reality of all of this is, especially when it comes to these judges, we have got to flip the South Carolina General Assembly before we can control the appointment of judges or even pass legislation that's going to change the law about the appointment of judges. We can't win when they have us 2-1 or 3-2 in our General Assembly, in both the House and the Senate and the governor. They've had a trifecta for 22 years here,
wow.
but they put the word out to the people that Democrats are the problem. And the people say, yeah, them darn Democrats, they're the problem. They're the problem. But how can we be the problem and we have not controlled anything for 22 years? 22
So,
years.
so Sean, you said the best just for individuals who may be outraged and just feel that there should be more accountability for the judge who actually
Mm-hmm.
who basically did the sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
SCcourts dot was it dot org or dot
Yeah,
gov?
sccourts.org.
Okay, all right,
Got it.
all right,
Got
thank
it.
you. All right, Pastor
I'm out
Dixon,
of
we
here.
give you the last word, man. I'll let you guys get out of here.
Yeah, the reality is that, and first off, Sean, has been great talking to you, and Gino, thank you for inviting me, having me on tonight. Sean, I'm like Maywood. My folks from out in Maywood, the Barcells. I don't know if you know them. but they've been out there a long time. I was in high
Oh,
school.
okay.
I was a senior year of high school when Fred Hampton was killed, and almost got kicked
Mm.
out of school going to the church that day to be with the people. But yeah, long time. Providence St. Mel balling on the west side at the Y. You know, yeah, summer balling and carrying on.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Right.
um, the way it stands right now, I've reached out to our legislators today, as a matter of fact, because yesterday was this verdict and this craziness. Today, I reached out to all of our legislators that are concerned with Charleston County, and I told them we're having a press conference on Monday. I know they don't go; they're not in Columbia on Monday. The family's going to be available on Monday, so we're having a press conference. I told them I'm expecting you all to be there. Confirm with me that you're going to be there. I'm waiting to hear back from them because if I don't, it's not going to be a pretty press conference. And that's the problem with them selecting me as chair of the Democratic Charleston County Democrats. I'm not bashful. I'm not shy, and I'm not going to shy away from. For far too long we had the conversation earlier in here. A lot of the problem we've had is because they said, it used to be the mantra, well, you don't talk about politics, and we believe that. While the Republican Party, they was like, yeah, they was strategizing and everything. We was like, oh, we'll talk about politics. And what happened? We got stuck. We got dealt with instead of us planning and strategizing like them and coming up. So for me, it's a blessing that to be able to use a platform like this and to be able to speak openly and candidly about moving forward according to democratic values, strengthening our role in the community, and with this family, with the Dantzler family, getting behind them and letting them know that they are not alone in this fight. Although for the last 3 years it seemed that way, but now because of that crazy judge yesterday, now all of a sudden there's an energy moving forward, and you can bet your last dollar I'm going to capitalize on that energy. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As long as it's moving, I'm going to be right behind it pushing.
Pastor
So
Dixon, what time is this press conference with the family on Monday?
unfortunately, I haven't worked out the logistics yet, but we're looking at Monday morning, probably around 10 o'clock, 10:30, probably at the Charleston County Library at, 68 Calhoun Street, I believe it is, right across the street from the school district.
I am inviting you and the family to come on Monday afternoon, evening, 6:30 p.m. You all will be the only guest. You'll have a chance to speak about the press conference and whatever message that the family has and you have. Whoever did show up, we can shout them out. Whoever didn't show up, you can shout them out. I will give you the floor, you and the family the floor. So I know there's a lot pulling at you, but you have that. I'm offering you that platform, so you can lock that in if you want to. I will not book any guests for next Monday. I'm offering you all that platform to discuss what was talked about in the news conference earlier that day.
Count it so. Count it so.
Pastor Thomas Dixon,
gotta
chairman of the
run.
Democratic National Party, civil rights activist, keeping it 1,000, our legal expert and our political expert. Brilliant. I told you, brilliant. Pastor Dixon, I told you, he don't brag. So he got me. I'm his hype man. I brag on him. But
Man, I love this.
the brother's brilliant, man. Yeah, he's
Straight
brilliant. And like he said, he's mellow. We all mellow a little bit, because if they'd have called us about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, things might, it could have went a different way.
Yeah, a real different way.
I definitely agree with that. Thank you for having me, Geno. Great to see you again, Pastor
Thank you.
Dixon.
Thank you.
Yeah, stay in
I
touch,
appreciate
please.
y'all, man. I love y'all. Sean, I appreciate you, man. If not, I know you're gonna be busy. I'll text you, and what we were going to talk about, and then this whole thing about having a insurrection act plan of action. So we need to discuss that because you gotta think ahead because like you said, the other folks, they've been long game.
Yeah.
Long game. So
They don't slumber sleep.
yeah. So we got to do the long game. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you all, man. Great
Alrighty.
show. Thank you to both of you all. Pastor Thomas
Thank you,
Dixon right
Geno.
here.
Appreciate you.
Pastor Dixon right here. Charleston County Chairman, Charleston County Democratic Party Chairman, and Sean Mitchell, attorney, legal expert, social justice activist, you name it, all of it. Thank you, everybody. Shout out to everybody. I know so many folks. Hey, Rosalind, thank you. Very informative show. Enjoyed it. Thank you. Excuse me, Julius, my man. How you doing there? So, and everybody else, so many folks watching. The show is interactive. If you have a question for myself or a comment or any guest, everybody watching me live now, please don't. That's why that chat room is open. Jump in and you can type in your question or comment or whatever it is, and we'll talk about it on camera. And once again, I want to encourage everybody. Shows like this, platforms like mine, Black-owned media, it is crucial because without Black-owned media, conversations like we had tonight, you're not gonna have that. You're not gonna have this conversation. Damn sure ain't gonna have it on any local media, especially not just here in South Carolina or the Charleston Metro, or very few cities. I can't, to be honest, none. You're not gonna have this conversation on local media, and now you damn sure are not gonna have it on your cable news networks. And I use that news is entertainment news from CNN. The closest thing you may get to this is watching, Rachel Maddow or my man Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC, but that's on a more national level. So it's so important because we deal with it all, local, national, globally. We do it all. It's a variety show. Talk about anything. Still have the entertainment and use the entertainment as the hook, is like the candy. It's like wrapping the candy around the medicine. So we wrap the medicine, we wrap the candy around the medicine, and we give you the candy, and you say, the candy's good. And you're getting healed. You're getting healed. You're being enlightened and empowered and emboldened and educated with the little entertainment and inspired and uplifted. So that's the goal. So please, you can contribute financially. You can support Black-owned media and my media company, Geno Media, financially. There's no contribution, no gift too small or too large. You can Zelle me through my email. So you can Zelle me, just use my email, Geno Jones Show. That's how you spell it, Geno Jones Show @gmail. Like I said, you can do it right now. You can do it when you get paid or whenever. You can just Zelle Geno Jones Show, all one word, at Zelle. That way, or you can cash at me, $Dad G Jones, capital D, lowercase AD, capital G, capital JONES, $Dad G Jones. And if you'd like to be a sponsor, I'd love to have you a sponsor. You can advertise on the show. Just shoot me an email, GenoJonesShow @gmail, GenoJonesShow @gmail, and I will email you sponsorship information, and we set up a meeting and make that happen. So I thank you in advance. Thank you to people like the Crate Group and their CEO, my man Kendrick, the CEO, Kendrick Bannister, Brother Al, as we call him. Shout out to City Vibes Bar and Lounge, Corey and Kenya Williams, 9730 Dorchester Road, the ultimate adult night spot here, Bar and Lounge, great food, all day Sunday brunch. You can check them out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. City Vibes, VIBES. The Crate Group, one of the top nonprofit organizations in America, the Crate, CRATE Group.org. CEO Kendrick Bannister, we call him Brother Al. Thank you. And shout out to Carissa Carter, the CM Transportation Group, one of the top transportation companies here in America, definitely in the Southeast, but in America. So shout out to Carissa, Black woman-owned transportation company. So she is a pioneer in that industry, and she was a big supporter of the show also. So I would love to have you on as a new sponsor. So please reach out to me. Or like I said, just individually, you can financially support the show, a gift, a love offering, whatever you want to call it, angel investor. Just Zelle me, Geno Jones Show @gmail. Use the email or $Dad G Jones, DAD, capital D, lowercase A-D, capital G, capital J-O-N-E-S. All right, Markel Bailey, the official barber and hairstylist for the Geno Jones Show. He is the CEO of Designer Cuts here in the Charleston, South Carolina metro. Check Markel and Designer Cuts. He is the master barber's master barber. Hair, whatever it is, when it comes to hair, he got you. Haircut, hair fix it up, hair restoration, hair maintenance, hair washing, whatever it is, anything to do with hair, Markel and his team, they got you. KELBECUTTINUP on Instagram or IG. KELBECUTTINUP. Kel be cutting up. Allie Jones, the official wardrobe consultant and stylist for the Geno Jones Show. She is the CEO of our own. Actually, she's about to come up with a new name for a company, so I'm holding off on that. But anyway, check out her Lexi Jones collection on Instagram on IGLX.NCL LX.NCL underscore, that little dash. And shout out to Bruce Gage, the Mario Uomo collection. Check it out on Instagram, Mario Uomo, a wardrobe consultant and stylist for this show, M-A-R-I-O, Uomo. Uomo is spelled U-O-M-O. It's an Italian surname, U-O-M-O. Got it? Got it. Thank you, Pastor Thomas Dixon, Chairman, Charleston County, South Carolina Democratic Party, and our political and legal expert, Sean Mitchell. Thank you. And everybody watching me, from Rosalind and Julius and my number one fan and my executive producer, my mother. I know you out there watching. I love you. And my niece, Perry Brittany, maybe is down somewhere, maybe in Florida. Be careful down there in Florida, Perry Brittany. She may be watching me too, and everybody else watching me live. Thank you for those who are not watching me live, but watching the show at your convenience, whenever you can. If you missed the show live, just go to my YouTube channel, and you can see this and every episode if you didn't watch it in real time. Don't forget to spread the word. Everybody watching me right now, tell everybody to subscribe to the Geno Jones Show YouTube channel. Thank you. We'll see you live Wednesday, Hump Day, Working Divas Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern.
Subscribe and tune in to the next episode of the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube.